Hi everybody, and thanks for being with me. Just a little bit late there. I was trying to get it to stream on Facebook, but that ain't seemed to be happening for those people that were interested. No one was, so who gives a shit? So here we are again with Avery and Tony. And how are you, mate? Good to see you, as
I'm not.
always.
It's good to see you, Tony. I'm not too bad at the moment. I had my usual lousy night's sleep, but it is what it is.
It is. It
It's
is.
probably because I drink so much coffee and things like that.
You're probably it as well. And I just wish to announce that are also live on Twitch, which is the first time we've done that forever.
How many
So
how many subscribers have you got on Twitch?
zero. It's the first time I've done it.
Oh, oh, okay.
So I set up another site some years ago, and then I just reset up a new one. So I don't know. I don't know what Twitch is. Is it true that because you're an old fart, you're kind of disconnected from the rest of the world when it comes to social media? I mean, I know YouTube pretty well. I know Facebook relatively well, and I know you quite well, Avery. So I don't know what that tells me, but
Uh,
do
that
we?
you need to work on your taste.
I need to improve my friendship base, maybe. Um, so anyway, today I thought we would talk, and you and I have discussed. There's been a lot happening in the world, which obviously needs our attention. Because without our attention, Avery, how in the hell can the world get better? I
It,
ask
it,
you.
there's no way it can get better without us putting our 2 cents in.
That's right. So today we're going to do that, and as a result of that, after the next 40 minutes or whatever long we speak, the world is going to look a much better place.
Yes.
So let's start with Syria.
Yeah.
So, can I just ask you, what was your response when you heard that the Assad regime had been toppled?
It was 13 years too late.
Oh, good point.
Yeah.
Yep.
The civil war started in, I think it was 2011.
Mm.
Uh, the Assad family has been in power for something like 50 years.
Yep.
They claim to be a democracy, but there's nothing democratic about having the same family in power for 50 years. Uh, I, as I recall, this guy, Bashar Assad, took power by killing his brother, or it might have been his father, or something like that. But he's a dictator. Uh, it's no loss him
Yeah.
going. It should have happened a long time ago.
And I'm sure someone will correct us around. I have these interesting people comment on my YouTube channel when I'm just doing my own stuff, that always that provide just the one-sided bit of information. So if I don't mention something, they will mention that I didn't mention it, and if I mention something like how did his brother die, someone will come and criticise you, Avery, for not knowing,
Yeah,
because clearly we're supposed to know everything, I think.
yeah.
So was it a bit like the toppling of Iraq? What's his name?
Saddam Hussein.
Saddam Hussein. Yeah, was it the
Yeah.
same sort? Did you have the same sort of response to that as you did with Syria, or not?
Uh, what did I have the same response?
Yeah. If you
Oh,
can remember what your response was, what was your? Okay, let's go back a bit. What was your response when Iraq fell?
you mean when? Well, firstly, I don't think the Americans had any justification for going into Iraq in the first place.
Yep, agreed. Agree
But
with that.
once they went in, uh, in fact, in 1992, the first Gulf War, they went in purely to kick the Iraqis out of Kuwait. They lost an opportunity to kick Saddam Hussein out of power then,
Yeah.
and uh, that invasion was justified. I don't think the one in 2002 or 2003 was justified. They were talking about weapons of mass destruction. Firstly, what's his name? Dick Cheney was saying that they've got nuclear weapons. Oh no, they haven't got nuclear weapons. We've got masses and masses of chemical weapons. They did have chemical weapons because Saddam used them against the Kurds.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, but uh, the the claim was that they were going to use them against the West. He didn't care about. He didn't appear to care about the fact that he'd used them against the Kurds. When Saddam was deposed, that was good. But another problem that George W. Bush had was when he went into that war, he didn't have any exit plan.
Yep.
How are we going to get out of it? He thought he could go in there and just impose democracy. We'll just go in there, kick out Saddam, and everything will be hunky dory. It'll all be fine because they'll accept our democratic way of life. You can't impose democracy on people. They've got to want it.
But Avery, I guess the difference here is that the Americans haven't chosen to come in. Russia have chosen not to be interested. Israel has decided to bomb all the ammunition sites, so that the terrorists, or a declared terrorist group who were aligned with ISIS and have since
the leaders of the major group that took power, they were aligned with Al Qaeda.
I got it right one. Sorry. Just what I got you to correct me as opposed to everybody else. Yeah. But anyway, so the bottom line is that they've taken over without really all that much resistance whatsoever.
Yeah.
And the West has chosen not to get involved at this point. So is that, given what happened in Iraq, is that a good thing?
Not getting involved militarily, I'd say yes.
Yeah. Yep.
What I think the West should be doing now is saying to the incoming government, what can we do to help you rebuild?
Right. And
in 1959, after Castro kicked out Juan Batista, I think it was. Castro went
one Batista, two Batista, three Batista, four,
something like that. Yeah,
that one?
Or was it Fulgencio? But anyway, after the Castro's revolution defeated the Cuban government in 1959, Castro flew to Washington to say, we've had this civil war, we've won, we need your help, right? Eisenhower didn't want to meet with him, so he said to his VP Nixon, you meet with him. Nixon walked in, saw this guy wearing combat fatigues, big shaggy beard, and said, you're a communist. Piss off. We're not going to help you. Nikita Khrushchev stuck up his hand and said, we'll help. And now Cuba's been communist ever since. If the West in Syria was to say now, what can we do to help you rebuild your country? Yep. We can avoid that sort of crap happening in Syria. Them being, we've got a better chance of avoiding that sort of crap happening in Syria with somebody like Russia or China stepping in and saying, we can do it for you.
Yeah. So I like the point, though, that it'd be interesting whether the West steps in and says, how can we rebuild you? But every time the West does that, they're looking for something in return, though, aren't they?
Oil, yeah. Middle East oil.
Yeah. Yeah. So
they won't say it's oil. They'll say we want to see a democratic government.
Yeah.
Right. But as I said, you can't impose democracy on anybody. You can impose something like communism. Look at China. Look at the former Soviet Union. Right. You can impose something like that. You can impose fascism. You can't impose democracy. You need to have people need to want it. Yeah. And unfortunately, my favorite topic, unfortunately, because of religion, that particular religion is completely anti-democratic. It's an autocratic system. They grow up with it, so they're used to it. And good luck with trying to impose that democracy on them. It's got to be done by persuasion.
It didn't take us long to get down to a religion, though, did it, Avery? I reckon that was almost record time for you.
Well, we're going to talk about something to do with religion shortly as well. So
we are. What are we going to talk about?
We are. Oh, the bombing in Melbourne.
Oh yeah, of course.
When we get around to that,
big time. So it's because in the Middle East right at this moment there is um, there's a re-establishment of authority, I reckon, because the Russians are leaving,
Yeah,
the Israelis are taken over, the Iranians are weakened because of uh, fighting. The Israel's fighting Hezbollah and the US and everybody else fighting them. That Gaza seems to have been. This is an interesting thing for me. The Gaza front seems to have been forgotten. As a result, we
yeah,
don't see. I don't see any reporting, not on mainstream media anyway, about what's happening in Gaza. They're
yeah,
still, they're still busily killing people and that sort of stuff.
yeah,
But there doesn't seem to be anything specifically happening about making the public aware as to the atrocities and the genocide in Gaza.
yeah.
So you kind of wonder whether all of this stuff in the Middle East uh, plays a part in forgetting or changing the focus, if you like, away from what's happening in Gaza to the rest of the Middle East, which
Well,
are areas in which we really aren't all that interested in.
Gaza is a tiny little area, 320 square kilometers, something like that. Uh, in in the big scheme of things, I hate to use this word, but it's irrelevant in the big scheme of things. All right,
It's
what
not
happens?
44 people,
No,
44,000
no,
people.
no. Hang on, no, no, no. I
How
said
can it
I
be
hate
irrelevant?
the way that it's irrelevant is it's a
Yeah.
tiny little place, right? It's not gonna lead to World War III. But the sort of thing that happens
No.
in that's been happening in Syria and Iran, the sort of work that the Iranians have been doing, and with Russia's support in Syria and things like that, that was a much more dangerous situation geopolitically, globally, than what's happening in Gaza. What's happening in Gaza is absolutely fucking horrendous,
Yep.
right?
Yep. Okay.
And it should be condemned, by everybody, right?
Yep.
But uh, when I said it was irrelevant, I didn't mean 42,000 dead is irrelevant. What I mean is that tiny little portion of land was not a greater danger to global security as Syria and Iran and things like that. Anything that happens that diminishes the influence of a country like Iran is got to be a good thing.
Yep. I agree. I agree. So so anyway,
I couldn't think of the right word to use, but
it's my observation that um, there is this other sideshow going on, which actually has been going on for 13, 14 years or however long it's been. Um, that sideshow is now over.
yeah,
The dynamics within the Middle East are changing. I think we've all got to observe that. As I said, Israel becoming stronger, um, Netanyahu becoming more powerful in a sense, I guess, and Iran becoming weaker, and the Russians too focused on Ukraine, too many resources being used there to worry
yeah,
about what's happening in the Middle East anymore. So
yeah,
that's kind of like my overall picture. But as I keep saying, because I'm a bit focused on Gaza and atrocities there, that tends to be a little bit more ignored these days. So it's interesting times, and then we've got Donald Trump who's going to march into the breach at some particular point and make some crazy decisions about something which is completely irrelevant and which no one gives a shit about, but will probably disrupt everything that's happening. Do you have any predictions as to the role the Americans will eventually play in determining how the Middle East massages itself?
oh God, with Donald Trump as president, uh, I've got more chances of visiting Mars than working out what he might do.
Well, just get a contract with Elon Musk. He might be able to help you get there.
Yeah, he was going to have a man on the moon by a man on Mars by the end of this year. He's got what? He's got 19 days to achieve that. Yeah,
Well,
so
it's
yeah, I don't think Elon Musk is the right answer either.
no.
Trump is Trump is so unhinged, so unpredictable that I've got no idea what he would do. None
Yeah,
at all.
that's the way I think about it too. I mean, at least with any other political leader, you kind of have a sense as to where they stand with regard to international issues. And you
If
know, how's that defence? What Pete Hesbeth? How's he going to respond to all of this? You know, how they're going to respond around just the intelligence they get as to where things stand in the Middle East. If they've got what's his name, Galby, what's her name?
Chelsea Gabbard,
That's Gabbard. That's right.
yeah.
You know, what with her in charge of the national security. I mean, it's just kind of like a mess. I mean, it looks like a mess, right? And because it looks like a mess, it acts like a mess, it smells like a mess. One can assume that it will be a
If
mess.
you elect a clown, you can expect a circus, right?
This is true.
You've got a clown has been voted in as president, an evil clown, well, a stupid clown. Not so much. I shouldn't say he's evil. He's just so intensely stupid, right? Tulsi Gabbard is eminently unqualified to do the job of national director of national intelligence. Pete Hegseth was a major in the National Guard for 5 years. He ran 2 veterans organizations and was tossed out of both of them because he was spending the money that was supposed to go towards helping the veterans. He was spending it on holidays for himself and fancy dinners and things like that. He got kicked out of both of them. He's never managed an organization that's bigger than a couple of dozen people. And now they want to put him in charge of 1.3 million.
I think one of the biggest jokes of all is the person that he fails to manage the most is himself. Yeah. If he can't manage himself in terms of his drinking and his womanizing, then, you know, how in the hell can he manage an organisation?
I thought it was rather amusing that he says that women shouldn't be in combat. And then what does he do? He brings his mom onto Fox News to defend him.
Oh yeah, that was a classic, wasn't it? So she criticised him at the time he left his second wife, I think it must have been, and accused him of being an alcoholic and a womanizer. And now she's there defending the crap out of him. Crazy stuff. Only in America. That's all I can say.
Only in America. I just thought it was really amusing, him saying women should not be in combat, that he sends his mum out to fight for him.
Yeah, that's a great point. Love it. Yeah, good point. Good point. So anyway, we don't know what's happening in the Middle East.
No.
But it is interesting times. And the interesting thing about all of that is, for me, is that none of that has got anything to do with the United States.
No.
In a way, you know what I mean? Like they haven't implemented any activity directly into the Middle East that we know of. CIA might have, that has brought about the collapse of Assad. No. Apart from the fact that the Russians were too busy in Ukraine and can't be bothered anymore.
Well, it was the Russians that were keeping Assad in power.
Yeah,
he was losing after the what do they call it? The Arab Spring. That's when it all started up, and his troops were moving backwards towards Damascus. Then Russia went in 2013, I think it was. They went in 2014, sometime around then. Somebody's going to come on and correct me and say, no, it was December the 7th, 2099 or whatever. You know,
2099.
Yeah, whoa, I know what I said. I know what I said. So whenever it was, he was slowly losing ground until the Russians came in, and the Russians they just showed what they showed in Syria, exactly what they're showing in Ukraine right now. They don't give a shit about the civilians that they killed. They just went in and start killing, you know. And that enabled Assad to remain in power until late last week. And then with their focus changing to Putin's little adventure into Ukraine and losing 700,000 people so far.
Yeah.
And you know, thousands and thousands of tanks and trucks and armored personnel vehicles, you know, infantry fighting vehicles, all the artillery pieces he's lost and things like that, aircraft. The Russian economy is spiraling downwards.
Yep.
The ruble is at, I think it's 0.5 cent. 1 ruble equals one half of a cent US, US dollars.
Yep.
It's crashing, and so when he couldn't, Putin couldn't expend the resources he might have wanted to expend in Syria, so he started pulling that back, and that enabled the opposition, the Assad's opposition, to gain strength and move forward.
Yeah,
That's the way I see that.
and apparently Russia is on the demise. So people tell me.
Yeah.
As you just said, economically, and they've probably been for a long time, and the wars are not helping them one iota. So in our lifetime, we may see the end of Putin and the return to democracy, hopefully, in
Well,
Russia. I don't
the
understand. I can never understand why the Russian people don't find a way to make a stand against. Maybe within Russia, they. My guess is that in Russia, they don't notice. They're certainly not told what's happening. They must be aware that they're losing their sons and losing this, people with it because of the war. So they must know that something must be going on. But
but
clearly,
in Russia, they the people that live in Moscow, they're not losing their kids. It's the person that lives in some tiny little village 3,000 kilometers away whose family's being killed, and nobody knows them. Nobody cares about them. They're Asiatic people. I don't care about them. I don't mean I don't personally. The Russian. Why do I care about somebody that lives 4,000 kilometers away? Right.
but the Russians must be concerned about the number of young people that are dying because they brought in the North
Only if
Koreans.
only if they know the numbers.
Yeah, true.
Right, and
True,
if they
true.
don't know, and if they're not Russian people, if they're not Russian-speaking Russians who are members of the Orthodox Church, right, who are not culturally Russian, they're just Russia because Russia happens to own Siberia. And who cares? This is how I see the Russian thinking. Russians in the west of Russia, the European Russians, saying, "I don't care what happens to Asian Russians; they're not really Russians."
Yeah, yeah.
Right, and it's them that's the ones that's dying dying and being severely injured by the 1,500 a day at the moment.
Yeah. Or, you
Right?
kind of got to wonder how long is that sustainable as well.
Yeah, they've Russia's lost something like in the first 2 or 3 months of his special military operation. There was something like 400,000 people left Russia. They weren't poor people; they were the intelligentsia. They were the technocrats and the business owners, and the entrepreneurs. They're the ones that went, and an awful lot of them have said, "I ain't going back." That is hastening the decline in Russia. He's sending all the people to the front, and he's got nobody. He's got nobody to what do you call it, to do the work in the factories to manufacture stuff other than weapons, right? And he can't build tanks fast enough to replace the ones that they're losing. He can't build the infantry fighting vehicles fast enough to replace the ones that they're losing. He can't breed soldiers fast enough to replace the ones that they're losing.
No,
Right?
so you import them from elsewhere. So,
Yeah. I saw something interesting today.
yep.
The birth rate to sustain a population in a country needs to be around 2.1 per 100,000.
Right.
Right? In Russia, it's 1.4.
Oh, so they're declining over time.
So they're declining. The population is about 20 years ago, the population was about 149 million. It's currently around 143.
Well, do you know, China's diminished as well, I think, hasn't it? Numbers in China.
Yeah, yeah.
So,
They used to be the world's most populous country. They're now the second. It's very close to India.
yep.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to take this opportunity, Avery, just to mention to people who may be watching our video, any other future videos that we might have, to subscribe to my channel and to ring the bell for further notifications, just to take advantage of the fabulous, insightful types of videos that I post, and also to have a look at the ones I've just done. I've done 16 days of activism in regarding gender-based violence. I've done day 15 today. I've got one more to do, which I might do later, which will be my 16th, and that's been my commitment to dealing with. And the one I did the one I also did, the last one, Avery, was on child protection.
Yeah.
And the impact the impact that social workers have working with women who are faced with domestic violence, and the fact they remove the women and the children, not the male, and they don't believe the women half the time because they're mother blaming. So that's worth watching as well.
Can I just say something on that one?
Sure.
But removing the women and not the men. If you remove the man, if you remove the man, he knows where the woman is. What's to stop him going back?
Well, the point is too that I made in the video is that if you remove the women, there's a lot of the time, even if you have them put them into a shelter somewhere, you'll be surprised how many times the men know where they are.
Oh.
If you move them to a motel, they get found there as well.
Yeah,
in fact, some of these homicides that we're seeing at the moment have been caused because the men have found them.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I know that. I remember a few years ago, there was a woman that moved to Adelaide from Darwin or somewhere like that, and she was found by her former partner who then murdered her. I can't remember her name or anything, but that was a few years ago here in Adelaide. But no, I just it's a discussion I had a few
security. I think there is the answer. The answer is
lock the bastard up.
Well, that's number one.
Yeah,
and make the contraventions of an AVRO more severe than what they are. That's one thing. That make the penalties for the crime of domestic violence, coercion, assault, and so forth more severe. I think they should be doing that, as opposed to focusing on the incarceration of 10-year-olds for breaking the law. And another story for Queensland. Anyway, let's not go down that path. And also, I think one of the things that they could be doing is investing in greater security for women.
Yeah.
So that they can have security around their house, cameras, fenced, wired windows. They could have far more security around there. And if a guy is noticed to be within 500 metres or a kilometre, whatever it might be, then he just simply gets arrested and locked up for weeks and months, if not years.
Yeah, yeah.
There's a lot more we could be doing. That's the point.
No, absolutely. Yeah.
And by failing to do so, another woman died yesterday as a result of domestic violence. So, very, very topical. So if anybody wants to have a look at those videos, I've got 15 of them up.
I've watched 13 of them. I haven't watched that 14th one yet. So,
well, do. Anyway, so the other issue that I wanted to talk about was it was a couple actually. So there's the bombing of the Melbourne synagogue and the impact that's had in terms of, and I guess this is my point. My point is, has this been politicized to a degree which is just unhealthy? And I guess that's the question I'll put to you, Avery. Has the issue, like the Sky News are continually attacking Albanese, and I mean continually.
Yeah,
there'd be almost every video you'd catch on Sky News at the moment is saying he's weak, he didn't react soon enough, whatever. He did. Well, what? Talk to me about that, and then I'll tell you what I think.
Okay. Firstly, right, Sky News, it's Sky News, so you expect somebody on the left to be attacked. Whether and the attacks, I think, to some extent were unjustified. They said, why didn't he call it terrorism? Because that's not his job, right? That is determined by an investigation by people like the Victorian police, the Australian Federal Police. They'll say, yes, this is definitely terroristic. He can say, I think it might be terrorism, but that doesn't make it terrorism. Right?
Yeah.
He can't just declare it that. The AFP and the state police are the ones that will make that determination, and that's what they've done. Peter Dutton, he said that he wants to set up, and I just making sure I've got the right wording. I've got it on the screen here. He wants to set up an anti-Semitism task force. Now, anti-Semitism is just yet another horrendous form of bigotry. Is he going to set up one that's going to investigate all the anti what do you call it, anti-Islam stuff that goes on?
Islamic, yeah. So I agree.
Is he going to set something up to investigate the 45% of kids that are taken into care by indigenous kids that are taken into care by the by state governments in New South Wales and Queensland? Is he going to Is he going to set up a task force to investigate what's happening to minors, particularly indigenous minors, MINORS, not the ones that are digging in the ground? Is he going to set up a task force to do that in the Northern Territory, or is he just going to try and make a political point and try and win a few votes from the Jewish community here in Australia by saying, I'm going to set up an anti-Semitism task force? Why not an anti-bigotry task force?
Well, if we did a anti-bigotry, they'd have to investigate him, I guess. So that would probably be, you'd see that as unhelpful. But I think my point is that that the funny thing about Sky News is they'll talk about, and they've got a whole lot of videos out, and there was Andrew Bolt was talking about this last night apparently, that that this is discussion, well, the discussion around the flag he was talking about, but he's talking about all this divisiveness. So they're the ones doing the dividing. So the way I view it is you've got Anthony Albanese confronted with a problem. He decides that he's going to talk to the police. They're not going to call it terrorism. They're not going to. Yeah, that's right. They're not going to call it terrorism to start with. They're going to have a look at it, find out who the people are that are doing these terrible things. They're going to look into it appropriately, and then they're going to make a decision. Whereas what the Liberal Party are expecting is that he was in WA. They expected him to hop onto a plane, travel 3.5, 4 hours back to Sydney, organise a gathering and all that sort of stuff, and that because if he did that, somehow that would magically solve the problem.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like the fact that he waited half a day technically in order to make a decision about it. I'm sure he was having conversations with people about it. We do have telephones. We do have internet.
Yeah. The thing is that why would he not just immediately say, it's terrorism? Because it could have been that this synagogue was firebombed by somebody who had a personal grudge against the rabbi.
That's right.
It could have been a member of the congregation that had done it. Right?
Yep.
It could have been, that member of the congregation, or that member of the synagogue. What do they call them? The rabbi, or his helpers, was having an affair with my wife. Right?
Really? Do you want to talk to us about that, Avery? Yeah. This man or this rabbi had an affair with your wife?
No, I'm just saying, until you've got the facts behind, or some information, more information than there was a synagogue was firebombed, you can't say it's terrorism. No. You need to look at what are the root causes behind it. What went on there, right? And then say, well, okay, we know it wasn't a personal grudge. It wasn't this. It wasn't that they owed him money, or, and and then you see that this person being the person you think might be responsible. You see that he's been posting a lot of anti-Semitic stuff.
Yeah,
Now you start.
I don't know what
I don't know whether he's
information.
been doing that. I don't know what information they've got. But you do that sort
No,
of thing before you say yes, it's
but
definitely
and I
terrorism.
think and I think that's the very point. The point is we do not know what information they've got,
Yeah,
and that. But the Liberal Party seem to have think this is an opportunity, and this is where I think it becomes political. The Liberal Party could have just shut up and said, "Let's resolve this. Let's all get together. Let's
yeah,
fight anti-Semitism together."
yeah,
That would have been the most direct way to have dealt with
yeah.
it and the most appropriate. And all the commentators should have said, fine, this is not one of those issues in which we should try to divide the nation. But no,
Well,
they couldn't
unfortunately,
help themselves, Avery.
yeah,
The bastards decided that they were just going to attack
yeah. Well,
Albanese in the Labour Party because they saw it as simply an opportunity, not to make things better, not to improve things.
just to attack.
Yeah,
Yeah,
that's all they're
we
doing.
get, yeah. So it didn't surprise me when Dutton said that sort of thing. It didn't surprise me when Sky News or Andrew Bolt starts going on about it from that perspective.
Yeah,
Right? It's attack the left because they are the left, not
yeah.
attack the problem. And how can we
That's
work
it.
together to resolve it?
That's it. They ignored the problem
Yeah,
around anti-Semitism. So they start off they're like, well, anti-Semitism is terrible.
yeah,
So is anti-Muslim stuff.
yeah,
But but they decided that they weren't going to focus on that. The focus becomes on the person. So Albanese and the government, particularly Albanese, who they attack all the time.
yeah.
That's where the focus becomes not on the problem. So they're not resolving anything. They're just creating more and more disruption.
Yeah. I mean,
And I think it's appalling. I think it's disgusting politics. And it's the one thing that really annoys me most is that it's so Trumpian.
yeah. I was going to say I'm not impressed with Albanese as a prime minister. I think somebody like Mark Dreyfus would be a much better choice, right?
Yeah.
But even if it had been somebody like Mark Dreyfus, Dutton would have done the same.
I
He was
like,
just
uh,
here's
I
a
like,
here's a political point I can make.
yeah, I like Tony Burke. Tony Burke's one of my favourites. He's
Sure.
in Parliament. He performs really, really well, though.
He does,
Um,
but yeah, he's not somebody I would vote for.
No, fair enough. We all have our,
Right.
but
Yeah,
but there was a time where I thought Tanya Plibersek would be good, but she seems to be on the outer now.
yeah. No, I've never been impressed with Tony
So
Burke, but I've always been impressed with Mark Dreyfus.
yeah, I don't disagree with you about Mark. The other, I guess, so okay, so at the moment there's this battle going on about divisiveness, and I want to talk to you about that.
Yeah,
Because there's also this other issue that has been raised by Dutton, by nobody else, but by stupid, I was going to swear again, but I won't, F-faced Dutton, who insists that when he is Prime Minister, heaven forbid, that he will ensure that we will have, that he'll do away with the Indigenous flag behind him. That it'll just have Tony Abbott had 8 Australian flags behind him, like that. That determines your degree of patriotism and your unity for the
yeah.
crown. I
Yeah,
just think it's a load of crap. But anyway,
Uh,
so what do you think of all of that?
well, you remember when we had that referendum or that long discussion a few years ago about getting rid of the current Australian flag?
Mm-hmm.
I think we should get rid of that current Australian flag. I also think we should be a republic as well, but that's a different issue. But yeah, I would, if they were to say, "There's the Indigenous flag, let's make that the national one," I'd vote for that. I think it's yet another example of Dutton just trying to score a political point and showing that the Conservatives are not really about progress. Well, they wouldn't be Conservative if they were. They're not, they're not really about moving forward. It's their way or the highway.
Yeah,
Yeah,
and they embrace this notion that somehow all Australians should align themselves to this colonial representation of who we are.
yeah,
And there are many of us that are non-Aboriginal who find it repulsive
Yeah.
to think that this flag represents some sort of discolouring of our history, right?
So which flag? The indigenous, the Aboriginal
No,
one,
no,
or
no,
the
no. The Aboriginal shows our history.
yeah?
Or
Well,
shows what
the
should be our history, or the Aboriginal and First Nations history. But
yeah.
the Union Jack and the stars demonstrate our association and connection with
Well,
the invasion of this country.
the the Union Jack shows that the British colonised it.
That's right.
Doesn't the uh, we've got two sets of we've got the Commonwealth Star, the Federation Star underneath the Union Jack. That's just an acknowledgement of the Federation of in 1901, and the other set of stars we've got is the Southern Cross. There's nothing colonial about that. There's nothing
No,
colonial about the Federation Star.
no,
That
no.
that
But the
the
Union
Union Jack
Jack's
in the
there,
top
mate.
left-hand corner. Sorry.
The Union Jack's there though.
Oh yeah, the Union Jack's in the flag of Hawaii, right?
Yeah, well, they
So,
probably should think about doing something about that as well.
uh,
But
which is
for us, and the other point I want to make about this is that there are stacks of other flags. South Australia has its own flag.
yeah,
You know, each
got
state has
Union
its
Jack
own
in the
flag.
corner, hasn't it?
I don't know what it's got. Who cares? But the other Australian flag is the green and gold one, which has
Yeah,
a kangaroo and the emu on it.
yeah,
You know, which is far more symbolic of our country, not
yeah,
necessarily. Well, it's not our history, but certainly our country, than it
yeah,
does the Union Jack.
yeah.
So,
I tell
anyway,
you, tell you
it's
something
just
else.
this.
Something else I would change while we're talking about things like that.
Yeah,
Get rid of that damn national anthem. There is nothing inspiring to me about that. That should stir the heart, if you know what I mean. An anthem, and there is nothing about that song that does anything to me at all.
do you know the
You
one
know,
I loved the most was oh God, I've forgotten the Seekers.
I am Australian.
I am
Absolutely.
Australian.
Yeah.
Every time I hear that, I cry
Yeah.
because it does start by acknowledging Indigenous people. The
Yeah.
first line is about Indigenous people. It's
Yeah.
I'd love that to be our national anthem because
Yeah.
it's just stirring
Yeah.
and it tells us who we are.
That's something I've said for years. It talks about
Oh,
the
right.
history, mentions people that Indigenous people like Albert Namatjira, you
Yeah.
know, and it's so. And I've shared that with American friends, and they say that should be your anthem. I've not heard anybody say I don't like that song.
Yeah.
You know,
I agree.
and hearing
100%.
Judith Durham singing it, Jesus, that is.
It's moving, isn't it?
Oh God, yeah,
I went through. It's about a couple of weeks ago. I went through I go through these moments where I just like playing certain music over and over again. What's his name? Roach, the Indigenous bloke. I used to love playing his music for a while because it's about children being removed and stuff.
yeah,
And then I played the Seekers and that song
yeah,
just over and over again because I just found it very, very
yeah,
emotional and very moving.
yeah.
So now that we've sorted those two issues out, let's see what happens. The other thing what was the other thing we are going to talk about, Avery? Can you remember? Have we come
Well,
to
we
the
said,
end of our tale?
yeah,
I think that's
we,
about it.
yeah, I think it is, yeah.
So,
The anti-Semitism with the Victorian bombing, and whether it's terrorism or not, and whether
yeah,
Albanese was right to not call it terrorism straight away, and what's going on in Syria. That's the two things that we said we were going to talk about.
yep. And we've done just that. And I just want to remind people for just stay online after we finish with this video as well. But I just want to say to people, please, we've had a number of people come online, which has been rather good. We'd like you to comment, tell us what you think, regardless of how unhelpful some of those comments might be. And just remember to subscribe to my channel and ring the bell for further notifications would be good. And we'd also like to know, Avery and I would also like to know whether you think you've got some topics that you'd like us to discuss. Let us know in the comment section what those topics are, and we will respond accordingly. And in the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and from Avery and I, if we don't catch you beforehand, hope you have a great holiday period. In the meantime, take care, look after yourselves, and more importantly, be safe.